from Abuja.
It's all about the human struggle to raise the level of living. That's what it's all about. I'm Magnus Pakol, and this is Magnus Pakol GVA. I appreciate you being a part of our show. In view today, we continue our discussion on the Nigeria National Conference with Mr. Okewale, President of the Nigeria Bar Association. But before that, in our quick view, is Europe getting too old for Africa? That's coming right up. Africa's dependence on Europe over several centuries is beginning to wane. Over the last 3 decades, Western Europe's trade with Africa as a percent of total has decreased from about 51% to about 28%. With regard to donor aid, in the 1970s, about 70% of Africa's revenue was in the form of aid from Europe. However, in 2013, only about 13% of Africa's revenue is due to European aid. Trade negotiations between Europe and Africa seem to have stalled, despite both sides recently celebrating the 10th anniversary of the start of negotiations over economic partnership agreements, that's EPAs. Their attention now appears to have shifted elsewhere. In crisis-ridden Europe, leaders are calling for ambitious, proactive, and constructive trade negotiations with their so-called strategic partners. However, these partners are located on the other side of the Atlantic and among emerging Asian economies. Indeed, in a recent address to the European Commission, its president, José Manuel Barroso, made no mention of Africa or the controversial EPAs, which somehow haven't been finalized by many countries, despite 10 long and difficult years of negotiations. The negotiations have simply been disappointing. Of the 77 African, Caribbean, and Pacific so-called ACP countries negotiating with the EU, only 36 completed an agreement. And out of this number, only 18 are in Africa. Interestingly, African countries also appear to be looking elsewhere. The continent is increasingly turning towards emerging markets in the East and the South and giving less attention to Europe. Indeed, during a key African Union summit held earlier in the year, no mention was made of EU-African trade. Instead, attention was focused on Africa's own domestic economic issues as the summit gave priority to deeper regional economic integration, especially increased intra-African trade, which has been abysmally low at about 11% compared to around 70% among European countries. In 2009, China overtook the United States to become Africa's #1 trading country, investing a great deal in developing Africa's infrastructure, ostensibly to enhance the exportation of raw materials to China. The Chinese approach in Africa is nimble, flexible, and bold. Everything is possible. And with Europe, Europe's current approach toward Africa appears old, unsure, and flat-footed. Africa and Europe can do better. Maybe they will. Still in view, we continue our discussion on Nigeria's National Conference. But before that, in our Hidden Economics, tell your story. Black my story, not his story. I think Ziggy Marley got it right when he sang this song. It is important to know how to tell your own story. If you don't define to people who you are, people will define for you who they want you to be. Remember this. You have to first say, I am, before people will say, thou art. The inimitable boxing legend, Muhammad Ali, defined himself to the world as the greatest.
I am the greatest.
And to this day, people call him the greatest. The peacock tells his own story, and how he does it is magic. The great and flamboyant former American football player, Deion Sanders, has said that image is everything. I think there is something to that. Think about this. The image Africa has today is largely due to the fact that the story of Africa is mostly told by non-Africans. When you are in, especially the Western world, all you know and think of Africa is extreme poverty, misery, disease, and hopelessness. But that's not all that Africa is. Yes, Africa is underdeveloped, but Africa is developing and offers hope and promise. Through some foreign lenses, Lagos, the bustling commercial capital of Nigeria, looks filthy and unwelcoming. But Lagos is a fascinating city when the people of Lagos tell their own story and show Lagos using local lenses. The story of Africa is rich and beautiful when local lenses are used to see cities like Cape Town, Nairobi, Tunis, Cairo, Windhoek, Gaborone, Abuja, and Accra. Often, a profile or stereotype is formed of you, and that becomes the image people have of you. The reason there's often an inaccurate picture when other people tell your story is in the costs and benefits to them of getting the story and selling it to those demanding it. For Africa, many of the people in the West, as mentioned earlier, have bought and internalized a pitiful story and will require a harder sell to change their view. Now, don't expect many people to be willing to take on the high cost of digging deeper to get a more correct story or image of you. It is too costly for them to do that. And they may not do it. So if you want the best representation of you, your organization, community, or country, tell the story yourself. Don't bet on his story. Count on your story. Our hidden economics for you.
All those things they claim they invented originate by African. They say they found it. Hey, they stole it from a motherland. And they claim they invented it.
Today we continue our discussion with the very erudite Okewale, president of the Nigeria Bar Association, a great legal luminary who has covered and followed trends in legal practice in Nigeria, Africa, and across the world. Please join me in our continued discussion. Thank you for staying with us. Okay, yes, Mr. Wale, we were just talking about getting things happening at the bottom and then having it come up to the top. I think if we want to be a little bit more successful and getting the people involved, and we're talking often about inclusive growth, mass participation and all of that. So it seems to me that it might be easier to get representation from all these different ethnic nationalities that we talk about if we use the structures that we have, instead of reinventing the whole structure, that is the whole Nigeria structure. We have it already. We have something already, which you alluded to. We have a democracy, we have a constitution, we have whatever. We have some organs and arms of government in place already. So can we just say at the state level, bring all your ethnic groups together, and you guys decide how you want to, first of all, live together, then also agree what kind of representation you want to take to Abuja. So that when a person comes from River State or from Kebbi or from wherever, they know that they are representing all those groups of people in their respective states. And they bring that position to Abuja because, after all, we're looking to have a united, strong Nigeria of states of people. We don't have people particularly representing ethnic groups, so to speak, in the National Assembly, representing local government areas or senatorial districts and so on and so forth. So shouldn't these people come not as a Hausa person, an Ikwere person, an Ijaw person, an Ogoni person, and whatever person? They are coming as Nigerians who represent groups of people that may be Tiv, that may be Igala, that may be Orobo. Isn't that how they should come?
Well, what is important, in my judgment, is the ability to get a good number of Nigerians participate in the process. That is why the Nigerian Bar Association, a long while the exercise was going on to amend the Constitution, we had expressed our reservations because we felt that it wasn't very well spread, and we had repeatedly called for a referendum, which will also be calling for this process. We believe that whatever is the outcome, whatever is the report of this conference, should be subjected to a referendum.
Yes.
That way, you have given every Nigerian an opportunity to participate in the exercise. Now, before you get to that stage, dealing with the specific question that you had asked, there's not going to be any perfect situation where you can get it all right. But you must strive. Like they say, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So, going to ethnic nationalities or going to local government system, what is key is the ability to get something that is close to, reflective of the views of the people in that state or in that local government.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It might not just be easy to pinpoint according to ethnic nationalities and all of that.
Yes.
To my mind,
Yes.
what is key is fashion out a modality that throws up a system where whoever is representing the people can harness the views of the people he is supposed to be representing.
Absolutely. And besides, that's how we're trying to build a nation. So that when we come out, we are Nigerians. We are not Igbos, Hausas, or Yorubas.
Exactly.
So, we're always comparing ourselves, somehow with the United States. But they have Polish Americans, they have Jewish Americans, but they don't come out as Irish, as Polish, as English. They come out as Americans.
Correct.
They may tell you, I'm from Massachusetts or someplace. They don't say, I'm Polish from such and such a place. If we continue to divide ourselves with the fact that I'm Hausa, I'm Igbo, I'm Yoruba, then we will never be able to build that Nigeria that we want.
Which is what we're trying to do.
Yes, and therefore, I think that people should look at coming as states. But in the states, you have these different groups. That's what I think.
I'm afraid you're not going to run away from it because you have different suggestions at the moment. Some have said senatorial districts. Some have said local governments. Of course, that takes us straight down to elections.
Yeah.
And whether it's for according to whether it's going to be on political lines or political parties' lines or not, it is going to dovetail to that at the end of the day.
Absolutely, yes.
So, I think that the steering committee has a lot of work to do.
Absolutely.
They have a lot of work to do because they will have to now come up with what they think is best, looking at all the proposals and suggestions they have received. The one you have propounded now, one of them. But at the end of the day, you're going to need to have the capacity to determine the number of ethnic nationalities you have.
Yes.
And if you did that, then to walk away from the tyranny of the majority, you will now have to allocate representation according to those ethnic nationalities.
Yes.
By the end of the day, you're bound to hear things like the majority is democracy. It's about numbers.
Yes.
And you're talking about the views of people. So I think to avoid such accusations. They should look more at representations
Yeah.
based on set criteria
Yeah.
that will reflect the views of Nigerians.
Yes.
And like we've always said at the Bar Association, a referendum.
But that's what I'm saying. Is that a blanket national referendum, or is it state by state or local government by local government referendum?
National referendum.
Then the majority will win.
Well,
The majority in this case, because it seems to me that some people are saying these ethnic nationalities, do they want to be together? Well, then the three big nationalities, suppose they agree on something, then they have won.
that is.
And that's it.
That firstly, the referendum should come up at the end of the work, at the end of the conference.
Yes.
It's not before the conference.
Okay.
The conference takes place, nominations are made, the conference takes place, then whatever is the result or the report from the conference should be subjected to a referendum. Because
Can Nigeria handle this kind of exercise in an election year?
that is a very big question. A lot of people have said so. In fact, it has led to some people saying that, is this not a distraction? Because I don't see how this can be concluded before the elections.
Probably not.
I don't see it. I'll be pleasantly surprised
Yes.
if it would be. That's why I've had some people, that's one of the reservations some persons have had. But I think the point is being made that if it must take place, then it must take place as quickly as possible, not to interfere with the elections. Some of the views I've expressed, of course, are personal to me.
Yes.
It is good to talk,
Yes.
but we must also appreciate the point that our problem is not in the documents. It's not in the Constitution. It's not in amending the Constitution. It's in us. The problem is in us. If we hold conferences 100 times and come with 100 documents and don't not change our attitude, we will not fly as a country. I mean, what has conference got to do with the fuel subsidy scams we've had? What has that got to do? Is that why the roads are not the poor infrastructure we have in the country? Is that why we have the level of corruption we have in this country? That is not the problem. But like we said, we are for it. It's an opportunity to always talk, an opportunity to get a lot of us get involved in the process. But if the truth must be told, our problem is with our attitude as a people. It is not in the documents. Make 100 conferences, hold a conference document, 100 document, prepare 100 constitutional amendments, unless and until Nigerians are ready to respect and build strong institutions to deal with our issues and recognize the fact that public service is about service to the people. Mm-hmm. It is not about acquiring primitive wealth. Yeah. Then we won't make any progress as a nation. We can hold 1,000 national conferences. That doesn't solve the problem.
On that note, I want to thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Last time, I said that the president should not be stampeded into concluding the conference in 2014 before the start of party primaries. This, I said, would be too fast and perhaps even faster than the speed that General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev of the former Soviet Union used to implement his policies of perestroika and glasnost, a combination that most people think hastened the collapse of the Soviet Empire. Let us not conduct an experiment to see whether Nigeria can collapse, because it can. In Nigeria, quite often, someone will do something that can attract very bad consequences. Then when you mention how they could be consumed by the consequences, they will say, it's not my portion. It's not by just saying, it's not my portion. You must do the right thing, otherwise it will surely be your portion. If we're going to do a national conference to correct the top-heaviness of the government and to promote equitable distribution of income and equal opportunity for all, then we must get it right. And I think we can get it right. We cannot play politics with this one. Nigerians are not dumb. In fact, people are getting wiser and can tell when someone is ready to kick dust into their eyes. The conference must resolve the issues around fairness and equity. Otherwise, at best, we live to fight again another day. Any political party that tries to play politics with the issue will surely be punished. If, as I suggested, the matter of having a genuine conference that leads to the emergence of a stronger, more united Nigeria is made a central election campaign issue. One more thing. Will delegates come to Abuja as ethnic nationalities or as aggrieved Nigerians from their respective states? If we come to Abuja as kingdoms and nationalities, then are we going to leave our crowns, hats, and spears in Abuja after having agreed to really form a nation of one people? I suggest that we leave the strong symbols of our ethnicity at home, which no doubt must be efficaciously represented in all forms. This way, we go back home to our communities as Nigerians who return with their pride, diverse and varied heritage intact for color and celebration of what makes us Nigeria. After all, we want Nigerians who can be proud of being able to speak our various languages and enjoy our various traditions, and not groups that are captured and immobilized by ethnicity and tradition. I'm Magnus Paco, and that's my view.